Well, let's try page 157. When we walk with the Lord in the light of His word, what a glory He sheds on our way. While we do His good will, He abides with us still, and with all who will trust and obey. Trust and obey, for there's no other way to be happy in Jesus but to trust and obey. Not a shadow can rise, not a cloud in the skies, but His smile, He drives it away. Not a doubt nor a fear, not a sign or a tear can abide if we trust and obey. Trust and obey, for there's no other way to be happy in Jesus but to trust and obey. Not a burden we bear, not a sorrow we share, but are told He doth quickly repay. Not a grief nor a loss, not a frown nor a cross, but is blessed if we trust and obey. Trust and obey, for there's no other way to be happy in Jesus but to trust and obey. Then in fellowship sweet we will sit at His feet, or will walk by His side in the way. What He says we will do, where He sends we will go. Never fear, only trust and obey. Trust and obey, for there's no other way to be happy in Jesus but to trust and obey. Let's try page 277. Sweet is the song I'm singing today. I'm redeemed, I'm redeemed. Trouble and sorrow have vanished away. I have been redeemed. I'm redeemed, my love divine. Glory, glory, Christ is mine, Christ is mine. all to Him I now resign. I have been redeemed. Great is my joy, now as onward I go. I'm redeemed, all the way homeward, my praises shall flow. I have been redeemed. I'm redeemed, my love divine. Glory, glory, Christ is mine, Christ is mine. All to Him I now resign. I have been redeemed. Precious indeed is my Savior to me. I'm redeemed, happy in glory, someday I shall be. I have been redeemed. I'm redeemed, my love divine. Glory, glory, Christ is mine, Christ is mine. All to Him I now resign. I have been redeemed. Oh, say again, it's good to be in the Lord's house this morning. But all we can really say is God is good. You know, the Lord will provide what we stand in need of, and He'll give us what we seek after if we'll just put our trust in Him. If we'll have a little faith and believe in what God has to give us, and believe that He is, and that He is a diligent, or I can't quote the scripture right now, but a diligent rewarder of those that diligently seek Him. I think that's how it goes. Y'all know me. I can't remember how these things go sometimes exactly, so you'll just have to bear with me. Join me much in prayer. We're going to be over in Mark chapter 5 this morning. I said, y'all pray hard this morning. I don't know exactly what we're going to do with this because I didn't know till 30 seconds ago where I was going. So y'all be much in prayer. Mark chapter 5. I'm going to start with the first verse. And they came over unto the other side of the sea, into the country of the Gadarenes. And when he was come out of the ship, immediately they met him out of the tombs, a man with an unclean spirit, who had his dwelling among the tombs, and no man could bind him, no, not with chains, because that he had been often bound with fetters and chains, and the chains had been plucked asunder by him, and the fetters broken in pieces, neither could any man tame him. And always, night and day, he was in the mountains and in the tombs, crying and cutting himself with stones. But when he saw Jesus afar off, he ran and worshipped him, and cried with a loud voice, and said, What have I to do with thee, Jesus, thou Son of the Most High God? I adjure thee by God that thou torment me not. For he said unto him, Come out of the man, thou unclean spirit. And he asked him, What is thy name? And he answered, saying, My name is Legion, for we are many. And he besought him much that he would not send them away out of the country. Now there was nigh unto the mountains a great herd of swine feeding. And the devils besought him, saying, Send us into the swine, that we may enter into them. And forthwith Jesus gave them leave, and the unclean spirits went out and entered into the swine, and the herd ran violently down a steep place into the sea. They were about 2,000, and were choked in the sea. And they that fed the swine fled, and told it in the city and in the country, and they went out to see what it was that was done. And they came to Jesus, and seeing him that was possessed with the devil, and had the legion, sitting and clothed, and in his right mind, and they were afraid. And they that saw it told them how it befell to him that was possessed with the devil, and also concerning the swine. And they began to pray him to depart out of their coast. And when he was come into the ship, he that had been possessed with the devil prayed him that he might be with him. Howbeit Jesus suffered him not, but said unto him, Go home to thy friends, and tell them how great things the Lord hath done for thee, and hath compassion on thee. And he departed and began to publish in Decapolis how great things Jesus had done for him, and all men did marvel. And that's all we're going to read. Y'all be much in prayer. Of course, these are scriptures we've heard many times. I guess I've probably preached out of them before. I know I have. But I look at these scriptures and we see that when Jesus came to this place, and, when he come out of the ship, it said immediately a man met him there who had an unclean spirit. This man, he was possessed of the devil. He was possessed of, these devils. And the Bible said that he could not be bound. Many people evidently had tried to bind him with chains, to bind him with fetters, to protect him and to protect everybody else. And no matter what they done, he just got loose. The Bible said that they'd bind him with the chains, but the chains would be broken. They'd bind him with the fetters, and they would break into pieces. And nobody could tame him. So this man had lived I don't know how many years or how long, here among the tombs and in the mountains, and he was always crying. He was always cutting himself. He was in bad shape. He was in a very sorrowful shape. But when he seen Jesus, he ran and he worshiped him. A man that was out of his mind with the devils, with the evil that was there. Even though he was possessed of the devils, when he seen Christ, he came running. And he began to say, he began to worship him. And the demons, the devils, they said, What have I to do with thee? Jesus, thou Son of the Most High God, I adjure thee, by God that thou torment me not. Because he had told the demons to come out of the man. Come out of him. I see here that, the devil here, he asked Christ, he said, what have we to do with you? You leave us alone. But I also see that the man, again, had come seeking Jesus and worshiping him. Even though, the devil had control of him, he wanted freedom. He wanted to be free from this evil spirit. But Jesus asked him there, and I'll try and get on in the message, but he said, "What is thy name?" And he answered, saying, "My name is Legion, for we are many." So we see here, it said, the devil said, "My name is Legion, for we are many." There were many evil spirits in him, many devils in him. And we see on down here that it said talking about the swine, because God allowed the devils to go into these swine. It said there were about 2,000 of them. So assuming that every swine ended up with one devil, there was at least 2,000 devils in that man. 2,000 evil spirits possessing that one man. How much evil, how much wickedness had this man got into? Now we realize and we understand that at least in the Bible times, it was not always of their choice. Now we read of people that was possessed of the devils from their youth up. So I don't know if this man had done evil, or if like some of these others, he was possessed before he was old enough to know right or wrong. Now I don't believe that happens today, because we've got free will. I believe we invite the devil in sometimes. But we see that this man was possessed of these devils. He was in such a sorry shape. He needed help. He needed Christ. And even in that sorry shape, he knew he had to turn to the Lord. And he did. And the devil tried to fight him. The devil said, we don't want none of this. Do we not see this today in our world and in our day? We don't want church. We don't want to hear that. We don't want to hear the truth. We don't want to hear about Jesus and that we got to make it right and we got to live right. We don't want these churches being built everywhere. We don't want to have to look at a cross. We can't have the 10 Commandments in our courtrooms. They're fighting. The legion is fighting, if you will. The legions of the devil are fighting the church and are trying hard to keep the lost in captivity and in slavery, just as they tried this man. They didn't want to come out of this man. They told Jesus, "What have I to do with thee? Jesus, thou Son of the Most High God, I adjure thee by God that thou torment me not." I'm asking you in the name of God to, even the devils knew. We're asking you by God that you don't torment us. But Christ had already made a commandment, and they didn't have a choice. They was coming out of that man. When Christ moves, the devil has to leave. When Christ comes into a place, the devil has no place there. If we're saved, the devil cannot dwell in us. The Bible says that God will not dwell in an unclean temple. If the devil is in us, Christ will not be there. But you better believe if you truly get Christ in your life, the devil won't be there either. Unless you go inviting him back in. But we see here that he had many. My name is Legion, for we are many. And I think about today, how that our world is, if you will, in a certain sense, possessed by legion. Because you look out and you see all the evil in our land. All the wickedness in our land. And you see that many in our land and in our world is in the same shape this man was in. The Bible said that he was crying. He dwelled there in the mountains and in the tombs. He was crying. He was cutting himself with stones. How many people today are hurting themselves, harming themselves because they're in such misery? They're crying and they're crying out for help. And they're looking for something. They're lost and they're lonely and they're miserable and, they're seeking for something. This man was seeking for something. Even though the devil had possession of him, he was trying to find some way out. It's got popular, and I don't know if it still is or not, but especially a few years ago, you heard a lot about all these young people that go around cutting themselves. They felt guilty about something they done, or they felt bad, or just that they wasn't they didn't feel like they were anything. So they just go around cutting themselves. Because they were in trouble. They needed help. They still do. Our young people, and even some of our not so young people, they're in such a shape. Because just like this man, the devil has entered into them. They may be good people. This man may have been a good person before this devil got control of him. We don't know. The Bible doesn't tell us anything about this man. But we know once the devil got a hold of him, he was in a sorry shape. If the devil gets a hold of us, he can destroy us. He can tear us down. He can get us in a state that we can't even take care of ourselves. That we can't even, if we let the devil, he can even get us in a place where we can't even turn to God because we can't bring ourselves to. There's so many people out there that won't accept God because, I'm not worthy. There's so many people out there that won't accept God because I've just done too much evil. God ain't going to forgive me. But God said he would. God said, I will. He said, whosoever asketh, whoso asks shall receive. But they don't ask because the devil keeps them blinded to it. The devil keeps them hid from it. The legion moves in, and when the legion moves in, people become afraid. And they won't try. They're afraid of church. They're afraid, and they use the excuse, well, they're going to judge us. Why is it those church people judging me? I ain't judging nobody. Now, I might see when somebody's doing something they shouldn't, but that's between them and the Lord. What I see is somebody that I wish and I would love to see come out to church. I don't care what they're in. I don't care what their past has been. Sometimes churches will, look at what they've been doing. We don't want them in our church. I don't care. I really don't. It doesn't matter what their lifestyles are. They're welcome to come out to church. Now, if they get God, their lifestyles might have to change some. Everybody's does. If we get God, when we get saved, we have to lay the old man aside. Whatever we was involved in, whatever devils we had in our lives, we had to get them out. We had to get rid of them. But people invite the devil in. People become connected and joined to the devil, if you will, and they let these sins in. They let this wickedness in, and it takes control of them. And they lose sight of what's important. I think back in 1 Timothy chapter 3, it talks about those that would desire the office of a bishop. Now, I know probably a bishop and a preacher ain't exactly the same thing. Not exactly, but we generally look at these interchangeably and consider this kind of the qualifications for a preacher. And, I don't know why anybody would really desire to be a preacher. It's not always the most pleasant job in the world, but it's what the Lord wants us to do sometimes, and the Lord will bless us in it. But, it begins to talk here. And it says that a bishop must be blameless, the husband of one wife, vigilant, sober, of good behavior, given to hospitality, apt to teach, not given to wine, no striker, not greedy or filthy lucre, but patient, not a brawler, not covetous, one that ruleth well his own house, having his children in subjection with all gravity. For if a man know not how to rule his own house, how shall he take care of the church of God? Not a novice, lest being lifted up with pride he fall into the condemnation of the devil. Moreover, he must have a good report of all them which are without, lest he fall into reproach in the snare of the devil. And then it talks about deacons, and it says they must be grave, not double-tongued, not given to much wine, not greedy of filthy lucre, holding the mystery of the faith in a pure conscience. Let them be found blameless. Even so, their wives must be grave, not slanderers, sober, faithful in all things. Let the deacons be the husbands of one wife, ruling their children in their own house as well. And it gives all these qualifications to be a deacon or to be a bishop. And I'm one that believes that God, the Bible says God is no respecter of person. So I believe if he expects this of the preacher and he expects this of the deacon, he expects it of all of us. And it's just common sense. We need to be, sober. We need to be of good behavior. We need to be vigilant. We need to be hospitable. Apt to teach, not given to wine. It's hard to reach the lost, and it's hard to make the case that you're a faithful follower of Christ if you're getting out and getting drunk all the time. We need to set a standard. These things get into people. He said no striker. You can't not get greedy or a filthy lucre, not a brawler, but patient. It's hard to give yourself and tell the world you're a Christian if you're out here fighting and getting into fights and hitting people, or if a man's going around hitting his wife or beating his children. It's hard to make the case that you've got Christ in your life. These are the actions of the devil. These are the actions of the ungodly. And a lot of times it's through, a lot of the things we get into, we don't realize. We don't notice. It's just like with alcohol. The people, a lot of times when they get drunk with alcohol, they lose sight of what they should be doing, how they should be acting. And they do things that normally they would never do. That's the why we shouldn't be drinking. Because it takes, and doing drugs too. Because it takes our common sense away. What little this world has left. But we let the legion in. We let the devil come in. I've always worried, and I know people say, well, it's just a game. And I know I've mentioned it before in my preaching, but I've always worried about these that will play with these Ouija boards. Because you're plain out praying. You're plain out asking the devil to come in when you go playing with witchcraft. When you go playing with these things, you're right out inviting the devil to come in and take control of you. And that's a dangerous thing to try. Oh, it's just a game. But a kid might not see it that way. Somebody else might not see it that way. And what might we invite in? What might we cause someone else to invite in? We've got to be careful. But this man, he was possessed of many devils. Like I said, I would assume by the way it talked, at least 2,000 of them. Can you imagine the sorry shape he was in? Can you imagine the misery he went through, the pain, the hopelessness? It said that he dwelled in the mountains and he dwelled in the tombs. And he cried. And he cut himself. I would imagine he tried to just end it. He was tired of it. He was miserable. But he just couldn't make it. He didn't have any hope. What could he do? Nobody could stop him. They couldn't bind him and lock him up for his own safety. That didn't help. There was nobody that could get rid of the devils. That didn't help. But then here come a ship and landed on the shore one day. And out steps a man. Now, what did you have to wonder, did he even know what Jesus' name was? I'd say he did, because the devils obviously did. But even though he was possessed of this devil, I can almost see, if I understand it right, here come this ship and went land out stepped Jesus. And this man knew, there's somebody that can take care of my problem. There's somebody that can help me. And he started that way. I'm sure the devil was fighting him tooth and claw. Don't you go down there. Don't you do that. He can't help you. But when he got down there, Jesus told the devils to come out. Come out of him. And they began to fight. They began to say, hey, leave us alone. Leave us alone. But Jesus wasn't going to have that. It's the same with us. The devil's going to try to hold on to us. The devil's going to try to get his claws in us and drag us away from God. He's going to try to get his claws in our families and keep them from coming to the church. But all we've got to do is get them to Jesus. All we got to do is look to the Lord. And no matter what that devil has against us, the Lord can take care of it. No matter how hard that devil has a hold of us, we look at people out here and we think, well, there just ain't no hope. They ain't no use witnessing to that person. God, we ain't going to get them to come out to church. We're never going to get them saved. But sometimes they're the ones that get saved and become the best witnesses in the church. Read down there when the locals heard what had happened, they become afraid. And they asked him, they said, leave. Depart out of our coast. So when the Lord made ready to get back on the ship, the man that had been possessed came and said, Lord, I want to go with you. Natural reaction, wasn't it? Lord, I want to go with you. How many times do we see people, especially very elderly or those that are sick, and they say, well, I just want to go on to be with the Lord. And we can understand it. Somebody that's chronically ill and maybe has cancer or something, and there's just no hope of them getting better in this life. They just get to where I want to go on. I want to go to be with you, Lord. But Jesus told that man there, he suffered him not, but he said, go home to thy friends and tell them how great things the Lord hath done for thee and hath had compassion on thee. Oh, Lord, I want to go with you. No, you got to stay here. They won't hear me. They want me to leave. But you can stay and be a witness, because every time you walk down the street, they're going to say, hey, ain't that man that used to stay up there in the tombs? Ain't that man that we couldn't even bind, we couldn't do anything about? Look at him now. Look at him. What a change. What a difference. Same with us today. It would be better. Paul said it's better for me that I go, but it's more needful for you that I stay. He said, I'm in a strait betwixt two. He wanted to go on to be with the Lord. We would all be better off if we could just go on to heaven when we got saved. Get away from the devil, get away from his temptations and his torments and the sufferings of this world, and go to heaven and be happy. We'd be better off. But our families wouldn't. This man would have been better off if he'd have just went on with Jesus and followed him. But his people wouldn't have been. It said he departed and he went down in Decapolis. I guess that's how you pronounce it. And he began to publish all the great things Jesus had done for him. And it said all men did marvel. All of them. Now whether they all accept Christ or not, the Bible doesn't say. But none of them could deny Jesus had made a change. None of them could deny something was different. Here was a man that was just a wild man. Just like an animal, just like a beast, if you will, by the description the Bible gave it. And now suddenly he was talking, he was clothed in his right mind, he was good. Now that would make a difference, wouldn't it? You'd have to stop and look if something like that changed. But you got to get the devil out first. And when you get that devil out, things are going to look a little different, ain't they? This man looked different. He acted different. He no more dwelled up in the mountains. He no more dwelled in the tombs. Because God had made a change. Because Christ had moved in and had cleansed him. Had cast that devil out. Had cast the legion out of him. What our world needs right now is to get the legion out. We need to get the legion out. And heal. Make a change. It's not as simple as just going and repeating a little prayer and going on with our life. We've got to truly give our hearts and lives to Christ. We've got to truly make a change in our life. We've got to make a change in our world. We've got to be different. We can't get the devil out and then go back to the mountains and to the tombs and dwell the same way we did. I don't believe he lived up there anymore. I'd be surprised if he ever went up there anymore. I wouldn't. I certainly wouldn't want to go back up there and risk running into him again. And I doubt he did either. We can't go back to the same way we was. There has to be a change. Just like what he told the bishops there. There's got to be something different about us. Held to a standard above the rest of the world. Not that we're better than them, but that we're changed. That there's something different in us. My name is Legion, for we are many. The sins of this world are many. And sometimes we tend to think, well, it's worse than it's ever been. There's more evil and they're doing more wickedness than they've ever done. No, there's not. There's really not. It may be more widespread because there's more people, but it's the same wickedness they do today they done in the Bible's times. Or God wouldn't have said in the Bible, don't do it. Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed for the sins we see in our world today. So many other places was destroyed for the same wickedness we see in our land today. The same devils that caused them to be destroyed are causing us to be destroyed. And until we get them out, things are not going to improve. We need to pray for our people. We need to pray for our countries and our lands, for our lost, that we can get the devil out. It's not an easy thing. But we have the power to cast out devils. Jesus gave it unto his disciples. Are we not the disciples of Christ? We may not be one of the 12, but we're still his disciples if we follow him. Paul was a disciple called out of due season, I believe is the way he worded it. He was a disciple even though he wasn't one of the 12. So were we. We was given power to cast out devils. But you remember one time they brought a man to the disciples brought a man to Jesus that was possessed of a devil. And they said, we can't cast it out. They tried to cast out the devil. It didn't work. He said, oh, ye of little faith. He said, I'm not always going to be with you. Sooner or later, you're going to have to do this. But he also told them that this kind of cometh not out except by prayer and fasting. It's not going to be easy to cast the devils out. But we can get these devils out of our lives. We can get this sin out of our world if we'll turn to God. If we'll show them there's hope in Jesus Christ. If we'll teach them, you don't have to be sorrowful. You don't have to be miserable. That in church, in a true church, there's hope. There is something better. People are miserable. They're looking for something better. They're looking for hope, and they can't find it. That's the reason they turn to these things. That's the reason they turn to harming themselves and committing suicide and getting into all the wickedness of this world is because they're sorrowful. They're miserable, even if they won't admit it to themselves a lot of times. We get into these things because we just don't like them. We're just not happy. But if we're saved, we're happy people. Sometimes I've joked and, especially with a lot of churches, we don't look like happy people when we go leaving the church. And I guess we've all been in a situation, I know I have in the past, at times when the preacher preaches, we may not feel too happy at the time. But, we should be a happy people. Because the devil is the Lord has cast the devil out. Let me get that worded right. The Lord has made us better. He's cleaned us up. He's given us hope. He's given us a future. He gave this man a future. This man had no future. He had no hope. But then along came a man in a little boat. And when he stepped out, his future was changed. He was given hope. Because he went to that man. He didn't listen to the devil. He didn't listen to the legion that was in him that was no doubt crying, don't you go down there. Without a doubt in my mind, that devil was probably causing him to stumble and trip and everything on the way down there, trying to keep him from going. The devil will do the same thing to us. Don't you go down there. Don't you get down there and pray. What are people going to think? What are people going to think if you're listening to gospel music in town? What are people going to think if you're praising the Lord? If you bow your head and ask the blessing over your meal, what are people going to think? What does it matter what they're going to think? What they're going to think, we know. Hey, that's a Christian. Hey, they believe in Jesus. Look at their life. Look at the change they're doing. They're doing something we don't do. We know what they're going to think. And we shouldn't be ashamed of it. We should be proud that they can see Christ in us. Not that we're better, but that means that God is being glorified. That means that the Father's name is being glorified and the Son's name is being glorified. And that's our purpose. And if they see that, then they might come and talk to God. Because they might wonder, why would that person do that? Why would that person put themselves through all that? and all the ridicule they're facing. Why wouldn't they go through that? There must be something there. There must be something there. And then they might come and see. And when they come and see, maybe they can get the devil out. You don't always have to be in terrible shape to have the devil in you. If you don't have Christ, you have the devil. It's pretty much guaranteed. You may not be possessed of a legion of them that's causing you to harm yourself, but if you don't have Christ, you have the devil in you. Because if Christ ain't there, the devil will be. He'll come moving in, whether invited or not. You know, they always joked about uninvited guests. You know, somebody just show up and expect you to put them in. Somebody just come along, and every time they come along, they'll come along at mealtime expecting to be fed. There's always been a few, you know, the unexpected, the uninvited. And we should always make them welcome. But, you know, if you don't have Christ filling you, you can be guaranteed the devil's going to. It filled this man. A legion of them. But God took care of every one of them. You know, you think about it, they requested of the Lord, the legion did, that he allowed them to go into a herd of swine. You know, they said, don't cast us out, let us go into this herd of swine. He told them, okay. He let them. But you know, I think a big lesson in this, you see, they went into these swine, and even the swine wouldn't put up with the devils in them. They run into the sea and drown themselves rather than be with the devil. And I'm not saying that's the way out. But what I'm saying is we should fight. Even these hogs, these animals, fought the devil. The only way they knew how. The only way they could. We have a way of fighting the devil. It's by getting on our knees and talking to God. We have a way of defeating the devil. It's by reading the words of Jesus Christ and applying them to our lives. That's how we fight the devil. These swine couldn't do that. These swine didn't have that option, but they still fought. But how many people today just welcome the devil into their homes, into their families? They listen to it on the radio. There's a lot of this music on the radio today that, I'll be honest, ain't fit for man or beast. I wouldn't play it to a herd of swine. I really wouldn't. It ain't fit. I wouldn't never let my kids listen to it. You know, but we do. We let it in our homes. And not just music, so many other things as well. But we've let the devil in. There's a time when these things wouldn't have been allowed. There was a time when the people would have stood up and said, we don't want this on our radios. We don't want this on our TVs. We don't want this on our internet. You know, we don't want it in our magazines. Now it's everywhere. Literally everywhere. You can't look without seeing something wicked and evil. And you can't go to town without hearing something wicked and evil and people cussing and, you know, I don't know why people like to cuss so much, because it don't make them look smarter. It don't make them look big and tough. It just makes them look small. You know, it makes them look like they've got a problem, because it doesn't help anything. It's pointless. It has no point behind it. But they do. You know, we need to get the devil out and get the Lord in. We need to get our churches in the world. You know, our churches need to not be in our building. We tend to think of the building as the church, but it's not the church. We're the church. I'm part of the church. You're part of the church. You know, so our church needs to get out of its building and get out in the world a little bit and start being a witness. It's hard right now. You can't really go visit too much for the last year because of this virus. But that don't mean we can't witness. That don't mean we can't be a light to the world. Continue to pray. Continue to talk to people. Continue to invite people. You know, just be a witness. Be a testimony. You know, that the Lord is good and that He can help get these devils out. You know, the greatest power, one of the greatest weapons the devil has is discouragement, depression, misery. That's what the devil defeats people with. But it's also one of the things that God can fix if we'll turn to Him, if we'll give it to Him. We all face discouragement at one time or the other. We all get down and feel like there's just no hope. But you know, God will always provide. I'll be honest, this morning I was a little bit worried. I'd studied some last night. I'd studied this morning. I was sitting there studying this morning and couldn't get a thought. I finally just closed my Bible and I decided I'm going to go ahead and take the dog out. And I'm just going to give it a few minutes and come back. And I just got out there and I sat out there and I thought and I prayed some. And then I got here and I studied and I still couldn't get. Now I was starting to get a little nervous. I really was. I'd seen several different places and I thought, well, maybe that's it. And then next time I'd look at it, just go away. I kept hoping some other preacher would pull in and did. I was getting scared because I didn't know where I was going to go. But then I opened my Bible and I looked and I'd had a bookmark in that chapter. I'd looked at that verse, but I didn't think I needed it. Didn't think it was one. Then I just flipped over there and there it was. And God said, that's what you need. God provided. But I was getting a little bit discouraged. I didn't think I was going to make it. I was beginning to think was just going to have a singing service this morning because I wasn't going to have it. But God provided. God takes care of us if we give Him time. If we wait on Him. But we've got to wait on the Lord. We've got to look to Christ to get rid of our problems, to get rid of our demons, our devils. We need to protect our children from them. Keep them safe. You know, we can't do but so much for our children in this day and time. They get out among their friends and out in the schools and out in their colleges. They're going to be attacked, especially when they get into the colleges and stuff. They're going to be beat on every side by evil, you know, by wickedness and the devil. And the devil's going to tempt them. So we need to make sure to raise them and teach them so that when they get to that point, they're strong enough that they know better than to get into these problems. That they know better. That they know that it's not acceptable to God. And so that they know to look to God, not to look to man. And it's not easy. But if we'll teach them. The Bible said, raise a child up in the way it should go, and when it is grown, it will not depart from it. Something to that effect. You know, they'll remember it. They may not always follow it. Best you can do, some of them may still not stay in church. But if you raise them there, even if they're not in church, they'll remember it. Deep down inside, they'll know. Just like this man knew. Like I said, this man in himself probably didn't even know who Jesus was. But deep down somewhere inside, he knew, there's a man that can help me. There's a man that can save me, even if he didn't know him. So even if they don't accept it, deep down inside, they'll know. And deep down inside, most people do know that they need the Lord. And if they know they need Him, then there's a chance and hope that they'll come to Him. And if they'll come to Him, God will help them. God will help us. So let's get the legion out. Let's quit listening to this legion of devils and demons that want to take us over and destroy us. The devil don't want us no good. There's people out there that build shrines and worships the devil. He don't wish you any good. He wants to destroy you. Because he can't destroy God. He wants to destroy the children of God. There is no goodness in the devil, only enmity, only evil. But people worship him. People follow him. People love him. The feeling is not returned. I don't believe there's a soul that the devil's ever loved. But he sure has hated a lot of people, and he sure has destroyed a lot of people. And he still does. But there's not been a soul born that God hated. He loves everybody. And he'll help anybody that'll come to him. So let's come to the Lord, and let's get our families and our friends and our people to come to the Lord. To see that they don't need these devils. They don't need these wicked things. What they need is Jesus Christ. And he can take care of the problem. And he can fix it. Do you have the message this morning as I feel it was sent?